In the 18th year of our marriage, my wife secretly supported a young man behind my back. The young man was none other than Wu Hao, our son's university classmate. They even flirted openly and boldly in front of me. On my 39th birthday, my wife left abruptly with a claim about urgent company matters. Shortly after, Wu Hao posted on WeChat Moments. Sis is so naughty, not satisfied with home cake. She wants me to feed her personally. The photo hinted at Wu Hao's abs, with a slender, delicate hand pressed against them. A women's wedding ring identical to mine was slipped onto his middle finger. I called my wife to discuss divorce, but she scolded me for being overly sentimental. Stop stirring up trouble. Do you really think I don't dare to divorce you? I collected evidence of their affair and entrusted a lawyer to file a lawsuit, demanding my wife leave the marriage with nothing, transferring all her assets to our son. On the way to finalize the divorce, my wife knelt down and begged me to give her another chance. Husband, I know I was wrong. Can't we avoid divorce? Who said you could look through my phone? My wife Yi Jingyao snatched the phone from my hand, a flicker of panic flashing across her face. I pretended not to notice the ambiguous message and calmly said, our phones are the same model and color. I thought this was mine. She frowned, unconvinced. Then I'll get a new phone tomorrow. If you have too much free time, go out and get a job to earn money. Our son is older now. You don't need to be a full-time father anymore. My wife and I were each other's first loves. We dated for 3 years before marrying. She has always been highly career-driven. She always said she wasn't cut out for marriage, but loved me too much and wanted to build a family together. To prevent her from overworking, I resolutely quit my high-paying job to become a full-time stay-at-home dad. I handled all household chores and took care of both sets of elderly parents, just so she could focus on her career without worries. Now, approaching 39, trying to re-enter the workforce would undoubtedly mean facing closed doors. Hearing this, her face darkened. Su Bin, what are you implying? I'm out here working hard to earn money while you're at home enjoying leisure. I'm telling you, from now on I won't give you another penny. You go find a job yourself. If you need money for food, don't come to me. I have no obligation to support you. After saying this angrily, my wife left with a comment about having work at the company, then turned and walked away. A numb pain spread through my chest. My wife spent over 10,000 yuan buying limited edition sneakers for some man outside, yet claims she can't afford to give me living expenses. The other person's WeChat avatar always looked familiar to me. It seemed like I'd seen it somewhere but couldn't recall immediately. My son Su Ryu sighed as soon as he entered the house. I composed myself, brought over the fruits my son likes, and asked with concern, what's wrong? Tell me if you're having trouble. I'll help you figure it out. My son opened his WeChat Moments on the phone to show me. Wu Hao and I bet 500 yuan on who could buy these limited edition sneakers first. My part-time job salary this month would have been enough, but Wu Hao's girlfriend bought them for him first. He was so smug, posting on WeChat Moments to show off, emphasizing how good his girlfriend is to him. I'm dying of envy. Seeing the strikingly familiar WeChat avatar on the phone, I immediately had a bad premonition. The sneakers on Wu Hao's feet almost instantly confirmed that he was my wife's affair partner, because photos of those limited edition sneakers had also appeared in my wife's chat records. Son, let me ask you something. Has your mother met your classmate? My son nodded. When college started, Mom drove me to school. They met in the dorm and exchanged contact information. I remembered that day when my mother-in-law suddenly fell ill. I accompanied her to the hospital for checkups, so I asked my wife who was off work to take our son to school. It's now December, which means my wife has been cheating for 4 months. For whole months, and I knew nothing about it. Son, if your mother and I divorce, who would you choose as your guardian? My son didn't understand, but answered earnestly. I'd choose Mom. After all, she's a woman and needs someone to take care of her. But I don't want you to divorce, Dad. Why are you asking this? As expected, my son is just like me, both willing to burn ourselves out for others' sake. Nothing, just a random question. Son, you don't need to envy Wu Hao. He's being kept by some woman, a trophy boyfriend. My son gasped. Dad, how could you tell? I explained to my son. You're freshman now? Few young girls can afford to buy 10,000 yuan gifts. Even if she's second-generation rich, why doesn't she show her face? It means their relationship can't see the light. You attend classes, eat, and sleep together. Have you ever seen his girlfriend? Probably not even photos. My son suddenly understood. That's true. Wu Hao never brought his girlfriend out to play. Not even a single full-face photo. At most, he shows off her figure. My son flipped through photos to show me. In the photo, Wu Hao sat on a chair with a woman straddling his lap, her back to the camera. Legs encased in black stockings were slim, long, and well-proportioned, without an ounce of excess fat, clearly well-maintained. I examined closely. The photo's backdrop resembled a budget hotel. Son, I'll buy you the sneakers. I'll also cover the 500 yuan you lost in the bet. Part-time jobs will hurt your studies. Focus on S. Cool, I'll find work. Don't worry about money anymore. I put on my coat and headed straight to my friend's law firm to ask how to ensure my spouse leaves with nothing in a divorce. My friend was stunned. Even you two are divorcing? I guess I'll never believe in love again. My wife and I were seen as the perfect couple by friends and family. I was considerate, family-oriented, and responsible. My wife was a project manager at her company, earning $1,000,000 annually. As my friend once said, anyone else might divorce, but never you two. Making her leave with nothing is simple. Just get proof of her affair. But don't act impulsively. Without evidence in divorce, your wife will take half the communal property. After my friend's reminder, I went to buy a pinhole camera. Then I applied to several hiring companies and unsurprisingly got rejected. I just entered home when I heard bursts of laughter inside. I wondered who it was, then heard my son introduce. Dad, this is my college classmate Wu Hao. Wu Hao stood up, his 1.85-meter frame half a head shorter than me. Hello, Uncle, I'm Wu Hao. Rue Yu and I took a joke too far, so I came to apologize. My wife spoke up for him. Rue Yu isn't petty. No need for apologies. Since you're good friends, visit often. Wu Hao readily agreed. Sure thing, sis, it's settled then. I'll definitely visit frequently. Sis. Seeing my questioning look, Wu Hao explained with a smile. Sorry, Uncle, force of habit. We've actually met before in the school dormitory. I thought she was Sister Rue Yu, so I even messaged asking if she had a boyfriend. Made a fool of myself. My wife blushed and immediately changed the subject. All right, no more mentioning the past. Su Bin, you're a good cook. Make 4 dishes and a soup. Remember, no ginger. Wu Hao doesn't eat it. Another pang of pain shot through my heart. I'm allergic to ginger. To let my wife enjoy her meals, I take anti-allergy medication while eating ginger-laced dishes. In 20 years together, my wife could never remember my likes or dislikes. I comforted myself. She was just too busy with work to remember. Now it's clear, it wasn't forgetfulness. Wu Hao dislikes ginger, and she remembers. She simply doesn't care to remember her own husband's preferences. Rage surged through me. For the first time, I defied her. I'm not in the mood to cook. Do it yourselves. With that, I turned and locked myself in the bedroom. My wife banged on the door outside, her tone impatient. Su Bin, how dare you embarrass me in front of outsiders? Don't forget who's been supporting you all these years. Now I'm just asking you to cook, and you refuse? Let me make this clear. This household won't tolerate dead weight. Either come out and cook now, or we're done. Unless you want a divorce, we can go file the PAP. Work immediately. The word divorce jolted me upright on the bed. My friend had warned me. Without evidence of infidelity, my wife could take half our assets. Swallowing my rage, I unlocked the door and went to cook for them. In the kitchen, I overheard Wu Hao flirting with my wife. Damn, sis, you were so cool earlier. I want to marry someone exactly like you someday. Sure, I'll introduce you to my friends. None of them compare to you. If only you weren't married. At nearly 40, who'd want me unmarried anyway? I would. Sis, you don't look a day over 18. Seriously, 38? No way. His oily flattery drew loud, delighted laughter from my wife. Listening from the kitchen, my heart felt sour. My wife was usually busy with work, sometimes returning home late from overtime shifts and passing out without even removing her makeup. It was me who helped her cleanse her face, researched reviews and product comparisons online, and customized a skincare routine tailored for her. I regularly applied essential oils and gave her full body massages to keep her skin hydrated, supple, and fair. Yet now, she took all my efforts for granted. Only after our son emerged from the bathroom did they finally settle down. I finished cooking and brought the food out. Wu Hao took a bite and spat it out, his face full of disgust. This dish is too greasy. I'm currently bulking muscle and can't eat such oily food. I suppressed the urge to flip the table, speaking coldly. If you don't like it, don't eat it. Order takeout yourself. Wu Hao looked pitifully at my wife. Sister, Uncle doesn't seem very welcoming of me coming to your house. My wife put down her chopsticks, visibly displeased. Su Bin, I don't like it either. If it weren't for seeing how hard you work to cook every time, I would have spoken up earlier. I haven't been feeling well lately and can't eat greasy food. Remake it with less oil and salt. Seeing his wife speak up for him, Wu Hao's gloomy expression immediately brightened up. Sister is so kind. Uncle, did you hear? Sister doesn't want to eat it either. Make it again. The unusual dynamic between Wu Hao and his wife even made their son furrow his brows. Mom, your discomfort comes from lacking oily nutrients in your diet and poor digestion. Dad consulted your attending physician. This is medicinal diet specifically for gastrointestinal issues. Dad slow-cooked those herbs over low heat for 6 hours yesterday. My wife froze on the spot, looking at me with guilt. Su Bin, I no longer wanted to continue this meal. Standing up, I interrupted. The doctor's advice was just a suggestion. You don't have to eat it if you don't want. It's not like gastrointestinal issues are fatal. Carrying the dishes back to the kitchen, I dumped everything into the trash bin in one go. My wife's guilt vanished with. How to trace due to my actions. replaced by overwhelming fury. Subin, what's wrong with you? I didn't know that was the medicinal meal you made for me. Wu Hao is a guest and Rueyu's classmate. Shouldn't we elders show some consideration? You're turning 39 soon, yet you're throwing a childish tantrum. I'm exhausted from work, and now I have to coax you too. Can you stop acting out? I'm truly tired. If I'd known it'd be like this, we never should have gotten married. My heart sank into an icy abyss, piece by piece. Back then, it was my wife who pursued me first. It was also my wife who insisted on marriage and starting a family. So this is how it feels when love fades. She can shamelessly shift all blame onto me. Wu Hao walked into the kitchen and apologized proactively. Uncle, I'm sorry. That was my fault earlier. Please don't argue with sister. Sister works so hard. Since uncle doesn't work, you wouldn't understand how exhausting being a project manager is. I couldn't suppress a bitter laugh. The project manager position was supposed to be mine. Before I voluntarily resigned, I recommended my wife with mediocre performance to the company's management. To help her pass the probation period, I handled all the planning, project execution, and closing procedures myself. Without me, my wife could never have secured the position of project manager. My wife deliberately defended Wu Hao while coldly berating me. You did nothing wrong, Wu Hao. No need to apologize. The one at fault here is him. Subin, stay home and reflect on yourself. I'm going on a business trip for a week. Don't contact me during this time. My wife left together with Wu Hao. I forced a brave face as I sent our son back to school. On my way back, I saw my wife and Wu Hao embracing and kissing shamelessly in public. A week later, on my 39th birthday, my wife rushed back covered in travel dust. She bought a 3-tiered cake and prepared an exquisite gift. Subin, let's stop fighting, okay? I love you. Why else would I have married you? While my wife continued her emotional appeals, I refused to listen to a single word. I had finally discovered why my wife had been so determined to marry me in the first place. My wife envied her best friend's superior family background and striking beauty. After secretly reading my best friend's diary and discovering she had a crush on me, I preemptively confessed my feelings and actively pursued her. I don't like Subin. I only married him to see Xia Lin humiliated. These were the exact words my wife said to Wu Hao. I couldn't take it anymore and flipped over the cake. Let's get divorced. My wife was startled, then responded with a dark expression. I don't want to argue. Cool off by yourself. I have work at the company. Leaving first. Short after my wife left, Wu Hao posted on Socha. El Media, you're so naughty, sis. Not satisfied with the cake at home, now craving the one on me. The post showed Wu Hao's cream-smeared abs and a woman's hand. The ring on that middle finger was identical to my wife's wedding band. I called my wife. My wife answered, sounding impatient. What is it? I coldly repeated, bring your ID tomorrow. We're getting divorced at the Civil Affairs Bureau. The wife was thoroughly enraged. Subin, stop making trouble out of nothing. Do you really think I don't dare to divorce? I forced a bitter laugh, my heart already torn to shreds with pain. Of course you dare. Wu Hao is still waiting for official status. You can't wait to divorce me quickly. After speaking, I hung up and dialed another number. I'm willing to return to the company and resume my position as project manager. The next day at the Civil Affairs Bureau, the wife appeared with Wu Hao. Subin, are you really sure you want a divorce? You can't even feed yourself without me, let alone raise our son. If you can accept it, we don't have to divorce. Our son doesn't want to see us split up either. I laughed, a bitter, heart-wrenching laugh. This was the first time I'd heard adultery justified as natural and proper. I don't accept it. Let's divorce. The wife exhausted her patience and turned to enter the Civil Affairs Bureau. Wu Hao smiled provocatively. Old man, you've got no money and no skills. It's time for you to get lost. In the future, I'll take good care of sister, unlike a useless piece of trash like you who only holds her back. I didn't respond and went in to process the divorce paperwork. There's a 30-day cooling-off period before divorce. I contacted friends to help with the lawsuit. In the afternoon, when reporting to work, my wife looked at me with disbelief. Subin, why are you here? I replied coldly. I'm returning to my original position at the company. Any problem? After the company director introduced me to everyone, they publicly demoted my wife's position. Due to her constant dating with Wu Hao and neglect of project supervision, major flaws emerged, causing millions in losses for the company. My wife remained silent, begging me with her eyes to speak up for her. I pretended not to see and fully committed to my work after taking the project manager position. A week later, I helped recover 80% of the losses, earning complete respect from my team. My wife kept looking at me hesitantly, perhaps regretting her past affair. A friend called to update me on the lawsuit progress. Your wife insists there's nothing between her and Wu Hao, denying the marital infidelity. Do you have any substantive evidence of their affair? Without it, we'll lose the lawsuit. I initially didn't want to publicize those explicit videos, wanting to preserve some dignity for my wife. After all, she's the biological mother of my son. Yes, I'll send them to your email now. That night, my wife appeared before me in the rain, looking utterly disheveled and helpless. When did you discover my affair with Wu Hao? Looking at the woman I'd cherished for 20 years, I shook my head. None of that matters. What matters is you committed adultery during our marriage and must leave with nothing. My wife began pleading desperately. You know I was just demoted at work. If I fail the reassessment, I'll be fired. I need money to live. You can have the house and cars. Consider it compensation. I stared coldly at my wife. Compensation? Can 20 years ever be compensated? You never loved me. You just wanted to outdo your friend, deceiving me for 2 decades. How do we settle that debt? My wife's eyes widened, her expression filled with terror. How did you know all this? Did Xiaolin tell you? No comment. I closed the door, leaving my wife to soak in the heavy rain all night. The next day, my mother-in-law called me, saying my wife was ill. Xiaobin, Jingyao is running a high fever of 39 degrees and still delirious. I know everything now. Jingyao was wrong. It's my fault for not raising her properly. I apologize. Can you forgive her this time, for the child's sake? I listened quietly, but didn't relent. Mom, Ruiyu is grown up now. He can decide for himself who to live with. Her and me, we can't go back to how things were. Just after hanging up, I received a call from the police. Su Bin, your son Su Ruiyu assaulted someone. Come here immediately. I signed the guarantee document and brought my son home from the police station. My son asked me tearfully if I really had to divorce his mother. Wu Hao seduced Mom and meddled in your marriage. He deserved that beating. Dad, Mom must have been tricked. She does love you. I sighed softly and played the original audio recording of my wife's words for my son. My son's expression shifted from anger to bewilderment. I advised him gently. Son, your mother never loved me from the beginning. I could never forgive her. But this has nothing to do with you. You're my son, the person I care about most. I told my son that the funds and properties under my wife's name would all be left to him. As for who he chooses to live with after the divorce, I would respect his decision. A week later, my wife was fired by her company after failing a reassessment. With no income, she couldn't afford the exorbitant legal fees and withdrew the lawsuit. Her departure empty-handed was a foregone conclusion. The matter of Wu Hao seducing my wife gradually spread through the school. The school suspended Wu Hao for misconduct that damaged the institution's reputation. Just when I thought the ordeal was over, an anonymous email sent to my company suddenly put my job in jeopardy. The company executive showed me the contents of the anonymous email. Su Bin, are you and Director Xie in a secret romantic relationship? The anonymous email provides detailed and plausible accounts. The company cannot ignore this matter. After reading the anonymous email, I immediately suspected Wu Hao. I possess recordings of my wife's deception. She wouldn't dig her own grave. But Wu Hao doesn't know this. He was beaten by my son, and my wife is being forced to leave the marriage penniless because of him. He must harbor intense hatred for both me and my son. Director Xie and I maintain a proper friendship. I will cooperate fully with any company investigation. I voluntarily requested temporary suspension until the truth emerges and my position can be reinstated. When I found my wife, she was living in a cheap rental unit under 30 square meters that leaked during heavy rain. Her parents had disowned her, cutting off both ties and financial support. She wore disheveled clothes stained with undried alcohol spills. Reeking of liquor, she slept crammed in that space with Wu Hao. When my wife saw me, her eyes instantly lit up. Su Bin, you came to find me. Does this mean you don't want a divorce anymore? I ignored her naivety and told her about the anonymous letter. The company will eventually trace the anonymous letter to Wu Hao. When that happens, the industry will blacklist you. It'll be impossible for you to join any new company. Wife froze, then turned and violently attacked Wu Hao, who was still asleep. You idiot, you've ruined me. Wu Hao screamed and dodged, repeatedly apologizing and begging for forgiveness. Sis, stop hitting. I was wrong. I just couldn't swallow my anger at the time. I truly didn't know it would drag you down too. Ouch. That hurts. I recorded Wu Hao's verbal confession with my phone and left. After sending the recording to company executives, I chose to travel to refresh my mood. Su Bin, what a coincidence meeting you here at the beach. I hadn't expected to encounter Xiaolin here. Come to think of it, I should thank her for telling me about what happened back then, and helping me place the pinhole camera in my wife's luggage, allowing me to obtain evidence of her infidelity. Also recommending me to my previous company for employment during my jobless hardship. What a coincidence, and thank you for everything before. Xiaolin blushed, speaking with regret. Don't thank me. I should have told you earlier, perhaps things would be different now. That night, I received a call from the company executive. The investigation confirmed Wu Hao fabricated rumors for malicious retaliation. The company reinstated my position. I requested leave to investigate my wife's bank transactions. Discovered she had spent nearly 300,000 yuan on Wu Hao over recent months. I filed a lawsuit against Wu Hao. demanding he return our joint marital property during the divorce cooling-off period. My son suddenly returned home, revealing he reported Wu Hao to the school. Dad, I support your divorce. Mom was wrong from the beginning. In 30 years I'll support her in old age. After all, she's my mother, but I don't want to see her now. Only then did I realize my wife, upon learning I intended to leave all funds and properties to our son, had begged him to choose her as legal guardian. My wife's only motive was to seize the money and assets. From the incident's occurrence till now, she never once considered our son's feelings, nor confessed or apologized for her mistakes. Our son was completely disillusioned with his mother. I respected and encouraged my son's decision. The road ahead is long. Don't look back. Move forward boldly. Our son blocked all his mother's social media contacts and phone numbers. Exposed for marital infidelity and maliciously slandered by Wu Hao's anonymous letters, my wife was completely blacklisted by the industry. Having sailed smoothly through life for 40 years, she now can't even find dishwashing jobs. Employers reject her as too old. The predicament I once faced had now become her reality. My wife couldn't endure 3 days before coming to beg our son. I stood at the door, not letting her in. My son said he doesn't want to see you. Leave. My wife suddenly erupted, hurling vicious accusations that I had turned our son against her and made him disown his own mother. Subin, I never thought you were this kind of person. Now I see your true colors. I was wrong back then, but I've been married to you for 20 years and carried your son for 10 months to give birth to him. Rueyu is also my son. I'm his biological mother. If it weren't for you poisoning his mind, he wouldn't be ignoring me like this. Faced with her baseless accusations, I laughed in anger. In her eyes, does our son have no mind of his own? Is he just a dog being led by the nose? Our son, who had been listening inside, couldn't take it anymore and rushed out to defend me. Mom, when will this end? I'm the one who doesn't want to see you. It has nothing to do with Dad. When you were sleeping with my college classmate, did you ever think about being my biological mother? When you were flirting with Wu Hao right in front of me and Dad, did it ever cross your mind that you're my mother? Now that you need me, you remember I'm your biological mother? I'd rather you never gave birth to me. The son's words were sharp and merciless. The wife collapsed to the ground crying. She begged for her son's forgiveness, repeatedly insisting her relationship with Wu Hao was genuine. I watched coldly without speaking. Yesterday, when passing a bar, I saw with my own eyes Wu Hao passionately kissing a woman with his arm around her waist. The son took out his phone and showed his mother WeChat moments. True love? Wu Hao just posted his new girlfriend publicly on social media. He wrote about finally escaping your harsh and old self, saying he only tolerated you for your money. With 1 week left in the cooling-off period, my parents suddenly came from the countryside. They exchanged glances, both wearing expressions of hesitation. I guess 70% of it. Did Yi Jingyao call you? My mother sighed deeply. No, it was Jingyao's mother who contacted us. Xiaobin, are you really sure about getting divorced? We're not trying to stop you, but you're 39 this year. If you get divorced, you'll be living alone afterwards. We can't rest easy about that. My father, usually a man of few words, immediately made a decision before I could speak. Your mother and I both support your decision. We've also decided to sell our rural house and land to come live with you. I was greatly astonished. Over the 20 years of marriage, I had countless times tried to persuade my father to move to the city and live with us. But father always said he couldn't get used to city life. Now, to take care of me, he finally agreed to move here. My eyes suddenly stung with tears. Approaching 40, both my relationship and marriage had reached their end. Only my parents' care remained unchanged, still treating me like an ungrown child. Wu Hao's cheating was undoubtedly a bolt from the blue for his wife. My ex-wife had divorced me back then precisely to be openly together with Wu Hao. Now she has not only lost me and our son, but also her so-called true love. My exceptional work abilities were quickly recognized by the company. The company executives decided to send me and Xiaolin abroad for fully funded advanced training next month. She called to meet me at the corner cafe, the same place where we had our first date 20 years ago. When we met, I noticed she had deliberately dressed up. Though aged and battered by recent blows, she remained strikingly beautiful. Biting her lip, she lowered her head to me for the first time. Subin, let's talk properly. I admit I initially pursued you just to see Xiaolin squirm. And Wu Hao, he did make me feel young again. Those words about not loving you weren't true. We've lived together 20 years. I've long been unable to live without you. I just refuse to admit it. Subin, I know I was wrong. Can you give me another chance? Even if just for our son. Her voice broke into sobs as she spoke. If it were before, I would never let my wife shed a single tear because it would hurt my heart. But now as my wife cries like a weeping willow, I feel no ripple in my heart. There's no possibility for us. Are you done? I need to return to company matters. My wife frantically grabs my hand, her eyes filled with resentment. Subin, AR. Are you with that bitch Xiaolin? I know it must be true. You accuse me of cheating, but aren't you doing the same? Stop pretending to be devoted, Mr. Perfect Husband. You're just tired of the old and lusting after CLN. All you men are rotten to the core. My wife descends into hysteria, spewing vicious insults. Patrons in the cafe begin staring. I can't endure it anymore and slap her across the face. Clutching her cheek, she stares at me in disbelief. Subin, you actually hit me for that slut CLN. I feel profound pity for my wife. Even now, she still doesn't understand that spilled water cannot be gathered back. I'm just friends with CLN. There's nothing sordid between us as you imagine. My wife burst into laughter, dismissing it outright. You think I believe that? You're about to study abroad together. How could there be such a coincidence? I was perplexed. How did my wife learn about CLN and me planning to go abroad? The farce continued until security arrived to escort her out. Ignoring my wife's unhinged insults, I drove back to the company. I ran into CLN and told her the whole incident. Could it be Yu Yang? He pursued me before, but I rejected him. Now that we're leaving the country together, he leaked the news out of jealousy? To test if it was Yu Yang, I falsely claimed in front of him that CLN and I would fly abroad tomorrow. Early the next morning, I received a call from my wife. She sobbed and screamed through the phone, claiming she was at the airport, begging me not to abandon her. I went to the company and reported the entire sequence of events to the management. After verifying the situation was true, Yu Yang was fired for intentionally leaking company secrets. No one continued sending messages to my wife, and she finally quieted down. The 30-day cooling-off period finally passed, and I went to pick up my wife to process the divorce. After not seeing her for days, my wife looked visibly haggard. Without my care, her skin condition worsened, and crow's feet appeared at the corners of her eyes. Loving someone is like tending to flowers. The more care you devote, the more beautiful they bloom. Neglect them, and they wither swiftly. This saying now materialized before my eyes. When we arrived at the Civil Affairs Bureau and got out of the car, my wife suddenly called out to me. Subin, wait. I turned around to find her suddenly kneeling before me, pleading. Husband, I've thought it through these days. I truly love you. I can't live without you. I don't want a divorce. I was wrong 20 years ago. All these years I failed as a wife and mother, and I shouldn't have cheated during our marriage. You're a good man. I wronged both you and our son. Husband, please give me another chance. I reached out to help my wife up and asked. Aid, earnestly. We can't go back to how things were. Even if we force ourselves to stay together, it'll just be an empty shell of a marriage. My wife turned ashen, her voice trembling. Is it really not because of Shilene? Both you and her should hate me. If I hadn't interfered back then, you two should have been the married couple. I shook my head. You know me. I never deal in what-ifs. What's done in the past can't be changed by anyone. I admit I hated you intensely a few days ago, hated your deception, your infidelity. But that hatred's gone now. Meeting my wife's confused gaze, I finally spoke my truth with ease. After 20 years together, how could there be lasting resentment? Though you never loved me, I know I once loved you. That's enough. My wife wept after hearing my words. I didn't embrace and comfort her gently as I used to. Instead, I simply handed her a tissue to wipe her tears. After completing the divorce procedures at the Civil Affairs Bureau, I called my father-in-law and mother-in-law. I explained that the divorce with my wife was finalized, what's done is done, and asked them to take their daughter home. I waited with my wife until her parents arrived, silently driving home only after watching their car depart. Upon entering my house, I found my parents and son waiting to have dinner together. Dad, you're finally back. Grandpa made your favorite braised ribbon fish. Come eat. Xiaobin, your dad won the lottery today and is thrilled. Have a couple drinks with him. Son, come taste if my cooking skills have declined. Today we father and son won't stop until we're drunk. Coming. I couldn't suppress a slight smile as I responded, removing my coat and changing into slippers. Walking over to join my most beloved family, who also love me most. We happily shared this reunion meal together.